You redirected the login page to what? The CEO's voice cracked through the speakerphone like a bad thriller villain. Someone knocked over a chair. Another exec whispered, "She can't legally do that, right?" But deep down, they all knew the truth. She absolutely could. See, an hour earlier, I handed them exactly what they asked for, a public repo link so sterile it should have been in a hazmat suit. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Rewind 2 months, back when I was just Barbara, the invisible plumber of their leaky digital pipes. Not an employee, not in the Slack channels with Pizza Friday polls and mandatory diversity memes. Just a contractor, a ghost in their machine. While the in-house engineering team spent their days arguing over agile rituals and naming variables after Game of Thrones characters, I built the infrastructure that actually moved data. SSO integrations. Me. Auth token refresh chains. Me. The email routing that told your client their invoice was late. Guess who? All of it functioned quietly, perfectly, because I made it that way. Not because I was told to, because I had to. They called it external code, like it was some pesky afterthought that just needed sweeping up. But without my external systems, their fancy dashboards were glorified paperweights. Nobody cared, though, not until it all started breaking. Back then, I was just background noise. The kind of person you forget exists until the toilet overflows. Or until, say, your entire login infrastructure redirects to Barbarnetio. And hey, real quick, if you're still here, listening, you've already proven you're smarter than their ops team. So if you like stories where clueless execs get smacked by their own fine print and underestimated tech women finally flip the kill switch, tap that subscribe button and give this story a like. It really helps the team keep building more of these tales of quiet revenge, fueled by caffeine and contract loopholes. Anyway, my arrangement with the company wasn't anything revolutionary. I signed a 2-year contract through my LLC, Barbara Net Systems. They wanted integrations done fast and cheap, and I offered both. But I wasn't about to glue my name to their spaghetti codebase. I offered to spin up external systems. My own infra, my own DNS, my own codebase. They said yes in under 6 minutes. No meetings, no legal review. Just, can you start Monday? The kicker, it's all in writing. Buried 3 pages deep in a PDF no one ever opened again, there it was. Infrastructure services may be provided via contractor-owned systems under agreed-upon SLAs. And just beneath it, an invoice I sent that November. Hosting domain, Barbarnetio, see appendix for licensing. I might as well have written "This will blow up in your face" in Comic Sans. Still, I kept my head down. The job was decent, paid on time. No meetings after 5 p.m. I had a sweet little flow, build the pipelines, monitor the traffic, automate what I could, and leave them alone. Nobody pinged me unless something was on fire. And even then, usually didn't understand enough to tell me what kind of fire it was. The in-house team, a rotating circus of bootcamp grads and mid-level coders who cared more about their GitHub stars than keeping the lights on. Once, they refactored one of my webhook handlers without asking. Production fell over in 22 minutes. Took them 2 days to admit it. After that, they never touched my services again. I became the unofficial official owner of all external logic, ghost with root access. Things stayed stable for months, until the founder's nephew showed up. You ever seen a guy in his mid-20s with a freshly laminated MBA and the emotional intelligence of a grapefruit? That was Trevor. His job title was Director of Operational Efficiency, which apparently meant emailing contractors at midnight demanding to know what value we bring to the table. First thing he did was cancel the company's shared Figma account to optimize SAW costs. Second thing he did was send me a spreadsheet of all my invoices with the subject line, "Are these accurate?" No hi, no punctuation. Just a spreadsheet and a ticking clock. The writing was on the wall. Trevor was coming for me. I knew the guillotine was coming when I got the calendar invite titled Quick Sync HR/Trevor 11:30 a.m. No subject. No agenda. Just the kind of ominous Outlook lob that makes your palms sweat, even if you've done nothing wrong, which, for the record, I hadn't. Still, I showed up. Because that's what ghosts do. We haunt politely. Trevor was already sitting there in the HR conference room, spinning his hydro flask like it was a fidget spinner for narcissists. 2 HR reps flanked him, Rachel and some new guy who looked like he just graduated from the school of passive head nodding. Didn't even bother with small talk. Trevor clicked his pen twice and launched into it. "So Barbara," he began, not even trying to mask the smug, We've done a cost audit, and it seems like your scope has expanded. Expanded how? I asked. My voice stayed calm, but inside I was already rifling through the mental files. They didn't know. Not really. If they had, they wouldn't be sitting this close to the ticking bomb. You've deployed services, he said, that aren't in our central infrastructure, that operate independently. He tapped something on his iPad, and according to this, some of them even route through a separate domain. I blinked. Yes, barbernet.io, it's in the contract. Page 3. Infrastructure under contractor control per SLA. Rachel chimed in. She just remembered she was here. The concern is that you may have overstepped by deploying systems critical to the platform without centralized oversight. I actually smiled. You mean the ones that send your billing alerts, route your API logs, and handle OAuth refresh? The new HR guy winced. Trevor didn't. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like he'd just closed a $1 million acquisition. That's exactly the kind of scope creep I'm talking about. Yet, I said, they signed off on all of it. I have the approval trail if you'd like to see. No need. He cut me off, then looked at Rachel. We're terminating the contract effective immediately. Barbara, we need you to hand over all external code and credentials before end of day. I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I was savoring it. That long, slow breath you take right before someone steps into the bear trap you left open. Of course, I said, reaching for my laptop. I opened a browser tab, pulled up GitHub, and copied the link. Here's the repo, I said, everything external. Front-end integrations, webhook logic, API pass-throughs, all sanitized and up to date. He took it like it was a trophy, like he'd just won. Perfect, he said. You can see yourself out. I stood, slung my bag over my shoulder, and gave Rachel a polite nod. Then I looked Trevor straight in the eyes. Just curious, I asked. Did anyone ever give you a walkthrough of what those systems do? He blinked. They connect the front end to something. That's when I knew he didn't have a clue. Not a single neuron in his brain had ever fired in the direction of OAuth flow or SSO redirect loop. He thought code was like Legos. Interchangeable, harmless, clean. Right, I said, and walked out. What I didn't tell them, what no one in that room had even thought to ask, was that the repo I handed over was clean, yes, but just one branch shy of operational. The real meat, deployment keys, DNS zones, live auth tokens, all of that lived elsewhere. Secure, legal, and bound to the infrastructure of my LLC per the agreement they were too lazy to read. The redirect triggers hadn't fired yet, but they were primed. And I went to the cafe down the street and ordered a cappuccino with oat milk, pulled out my phone, opened the dashboard. I tapped one toggle labeled transfer, passive mode active. It wasn't sabotage, it wasn't revenge, it was simply release. They pulled the plug on the contractor who owned the pipes, and the water was already starting to leak. It started small, an innocuous ping in the status channel. 11:47 a.m., anyone else seeing weird redirect loops on the client login? Then another. 11:51 a.m., OAuth failed, being routed to barbernet.io. By 12:03 p.m., it was no longer a trickle, it was a flood. Every single one of their enterprise clients was locked out of their dashboards. Billing systems froze. Access tokens expired mid-session. The login page, once a neat white rectangle with their corporate logo and a forgettable tagline, now simply read, "Service temporarily transferred, please contact new owner." The text was centered, Helvetica new, clean, professional, a kind of quiet chaos. I was on my second cappuccino by then, feet up in the sunlit corner of my favorite coworking space, watching the internal firestorm unfold like it was a Netflix premiere. Laptop open, one hand scrolling through emails, another resting near the DNS console, not touching anything, just admiring the symmetry. Because here's the thing, they thought external meant disposable. What they failed to grasp, everyone fails to grasp until it's too late, is that integration isn't an afterthought. It's the bloodstream. And if you give the heart to someone else and forget to check the paperwork, well, don't be surprised when it beats to their rhythm. 12:08 p.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then the CEO called. Barbara, he barked before I could even say hello. Why does our platform redirect to your domain? There it was, the magic phrase. 9-word haiku of corporate panic. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. Just let the silence breathe a little. Let the horror multiply in his imagination like malware in an unpatched server. Barbara, are you there? I ended the call. Seconds later, a Slack message came through from one of the few engineers I actually liked. Holy SHT. This is you, isn't it? Respect. Also, any chance you'll not hold our billing hostage? I got a wedding to pay for. I sent him a smiley face and closed the window. Back at HQ, I imagine it was a war room of suits and sweat. CTO flipping through terminal logs he couldn't decipher. Legal scrambling for contracts. HR pretending they weren't involved. Trevor, probably Googling how to reverse a DNS redirect and wondering why he hadn't majored in literally anything useful. The true moment of panic came around 12:23 p.m. and someone finally read the contract I'd signed 2 years ago, the one filed under Contractor Integrations Tier 3. There, in neat little Helvetica size 10, beneath the scope of work section, lived the sleeping dragon. All third-party service architecture, including but not limited to routing infrastructure, authentication proxies, and analytics pipelines, may be built and deployed via contractor-owned systems. Service ownership to remain with Barber Net Systems, LLC, unless explicitly reassigned in writing. Signed, dated, digitally countersigned by their then CTO, uploaded to their own internal Confluence page. Page 3 of 17, never once flagged. They didn't own the road. They just drove on it. And now they were sitting in traffic with the brakes cut, wondering why none of their precious internal engineers had a damn clue how to start the tow truck. At 12:45 p.m., I had 3 emails in my inbox. A recruiter from a Fortune 100 company, subject line, loved your graceful takedown. Need an infra lead? An angel investor who'd clearly heard about the chaos from a board member, offering to fund a startup version of what I'd just done. And most satisfying of all, a message from one of their board members, someone I'd spoken to once, 2 Christmas parties ago, asking if I had a few minutes to talk about potential collaboration. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wanted them to feel it, to really feel it. Because you don't terminate a systems architect and keep the castle. You just fire the locksmith and pray the doors never close. The audit began with panic and ended in a silence so dense you could hear Slack crash under the weight of unread messages. At 1:04 p.m., the CTO, man named Colin, who wore his job title like a bulletproof vest, marched into the glass conference room on the 4th floor and slammed his laptop, shut like that, would somehow force the universe to obey. He had 2 engineers in tow, both too junior and too nervous to say the obvious out loud. They had no idea what they were looking at. What they did have was the repo I'd handed over, the clean, public-facing codebase that looked shiny from the outside but was missing all the secret sauce. No deployment tokens, no environment configs, no keys, just a README file that said, for demo purposes only. Trevor was pacing. He kept asking variations of the same question like repetition would eventually change the answer. Can't we just reverse it? I mean, it's just code, right? Just push it somewhere else. Colin didn't respond, was too busy realizing that even if they cloned the repo, even if they stood up their own server, the domain, the pipes, were still mine. Every single redirect, every SSO call, every webhook handshake depended on infrastructure mapped through DNS records that pointed to my servers, my cloud account, my authentication layers, all spun up under Barber Net Systems, LLC, legal joined at 1:26 p.m. 2 of them. One in business casual, other in that desperate kind of suit you only wear when you know you're going to court soon. They opened my file and started scanning the PDFs. No one had looked at them since onboarding. Why would they? I was just a contractor. That changed when they hit page 3. The junior associate read aloud, his voice flat hollow. Contractor shall retain service ownership of all systems built and deployed under the scope of this agreement, including authentication proxies, logging infrastructures, external dashboards, and all associated domain-level access. He looked up, wide-eyed. Unless otherwise reassigned in writing, he finished. There was no such reassignment. That was the turning point. The moment the tide didn't just shift, it capsized. They'd fired the person who owned the entire external stack, and they hadn't even asked for a transition plan. They wanted a repo link like it was a pizza order. No keys, no walkthrough, no asset inventory. They didn't even know the difference between hosted service and deployed infrastructure. At 1:34 p.m., someone finally said the thing no one wanted to hear. She didn't hack us. She owns it. The room went still. Trevor, pale now, muttered something about precedent and breach of ethics, but even legal shot him a look like not now, bro. Colin just sat there, shoulders slack, scrolling through logs. Every auth failure, every SSO timeout. every failed webhook, they all led to one IP block. Mine. Then came the realization that broke the room. They didn't even have a list of dependencies. No centralized index of what I'd built. They'd never asked. They didn't care. I'd been their magic button for 2 years. They clicked it. It worked. That was enough. Until it wasn't. Meanwhile, I was still at the cafe. Finished my cappuccino. Took a walk. Myself a new mouse because the old one had started sticking around the scroll wheel, and I wanted to treat myself. Checked my email again. 4 new messages. All offers. One was from an old colleague who now ran infrastructure at a fintech firm. You win. That was art. Want to build something real? I smiled. Not because I was gloating, but because this was what quiet, patient work earns you when everyone else is playing dress-up with job titles and jargon. Back in that glass box of a conference room, Colin finally leaned forward, hands steepled, and asked legal the only question that mattered. Can we force her to give it back? The lawyer, bless him, didn't even pretend. No, she didn't steal it. You signed it over. And just like that, they weren't running an audit. They were preparing for ransom negotiations. By 2:00 p.m., gloves were off, and the execs had turned on each other like coked-up hyenas, circling a dry erase board. Finger-pointing doesn't even begin to describe it. Trevor was yelling. Colin was swearing in acronyms. Legal was redlining documents that were already legally binding, as if highlighters could rewind time. The CFO even got pulled in via Zoom from Cabo, shirtless, furious, holding a margarita like it was a subpoena. You're telling me, he said, staring dead-eyed into the camera, that we built 42% of our client pipeline on infrastructure we don't own. No one answered. Does no one here know what a vendor clause is? He barked, shaking his drink so hard the lime wedge flew out. And then came the email. 2:17 p.m. Someone leaked a thread from 2 years ago. It was between me, the old CTO, and the CEO himself. I proposed using my own cloud environment for faster delivery. I even attached a line item breakdown. AWS usage, DNS ownership, service mapping, all under Barber Net Systems, LLC. The old CTO replied, fine by me. The CEO's response, as long as it works, let her handle it. That sentence hit like a grenade lobbed directly into the war room. Because now there was proof, not just negligence, but indifference. Didn't just allow me to own the pipeline. They endorsed it, out loud, in writing. And now the paper trail was starting to smell like kerosene. Trevor, ever the opportunist, tried to wriggle out by saying he'd inherited the setup, that this was all legacy tech debt, and he was the one finally addressing it. But legal wasn't buying it, not with his name on 3 separate approvals over the last quarter, each one greenlighting scope extensions without legal review. Imagine the room looked like a bad improv class, hosted in a burning building. Meanwhile, I was sitting 3 blocks away in the garden of the coworking space, watching the chaos unfold through leaked Slack screenshots forwarded by 2 different engineers, neither of whom had ever spoken to each other, but both felt compelled to keep me updated like field reporters in a corporate civil war. CEO just screamed what the F is a reverse proxy. CFO asked if we can just buy a new domain and start fresh. Colin told him it'd take months and kill current clients. Oh my God, Trevor just said, can't we sue her for feelings? I swear to God, that's the exact phrase. I chuckled into my tea, not maliciously, well, maybe a little, but mostly because this was the first time in 2 years anyone had noticed what I built. And they only noticed now because it was gone. That's the problem with background work. People forget it exists until it disappears. But what really drove the nail in came at 2:39 p.m. A sysadmin, poor guy just doing his job, pulled up a traffic log from the API gateway. He projected it onto the boardroom screen. And there it was, plain as daylight, root endpoint, Barber Netio for 2 years. Every single auth call, every payment route, every dashboard refresh. They hadn't just been using my systems, been depending on them as if they were their own. And nobody noticed, because it worked, perfectly. Until the day they fired the ghost in the machine. At that moment, I imagined the air went out of the room. No more shouting, no more bullet points. Just the cold realization that the person they'd tried to cut loose was the only one who'd been holding the seams together. I closed my laptop. Outside, the breeze was cool. Leaves rustled. Street hummed with the kind of careless energy only the oblivious can enjoy. It felt good. Not revenge, not victory, just balance. By 3:02 p.m., the boardroom had hemorrhaged so much dignity that even the plants by the windows looked embarrassed. Colin was pacing in tight geometric loops. Trevor was scrolling LinkedIn like salvation might be tucked between an ad for ergonomic chairs and a boot camp certificate. HR had vanished entirely, either fired or vaporized. And that's when the shift happened. Subtle, tactical. The execs stopped barking at each other and started looking upward, toward the suits who didn't yell, didn't emote, didn't need to be in the building to rearrange your career with a single calendar invite. At 3:15 p.m., I received the first email. Subject, discussion opportunity from board admin at redacted. Calm body, Barbara. I'd appreciate a moment of your time to discuss potential alignment on infrastructure assets. Confidential. No commitment. Please advise on availability. No apology, no flattery. Just careful antiseptic wording designed to suggest that maybe I'd like to save them. Like I was a lifeguard they'd tossed in the ocean last week, now shouting no hard feelings from a drowning yacht. I didn't respond. 3 minutes later, a second email. This one from a name I recognized, Monica Ellsworth, board VP. We'd exchanged maybe 3 words across 2 holiday parties. She once asked if I was the Zoom technician. I said yes, because honestly, who cared? Her message was direct. Hi, Barbara. I understand there's been a breakdown in communications. If you're open to resolution, I'd like to schedule a private call. My calendar is wide open today. Resolution. Cute word. This was a Wi-Fi issue and not the digital equivalent of setting your house on fire, then asking the arsonist if she wanted to come back as head decorator. I sipped my tea. Then I opened a new doc. The title, Buyback Framework. Inside, just one line, restoration of routing, authentication, and analytics infrastructure available via 12-month license plus support retainer. Payment due upfront. That was it. No friendly paragraph. No bulleted options. No summary of services. Just terms, my terms. The toll booth was up. If they wanted back in, they'd pay. And they'd pay before touching a single redirect. At 3:29 p.m., I sent it to Monica. No subject line, no sign-off. Let them feel the weight of the silence. 2 minutes later, she replied, understood. I'll share this with the board. By 3:45, I had an incoming call. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then another, this one from the CFO. Let it ring. My favorite part of negotiations isn't the talking. It's the pause after you say nothing. That's where the power lies. Meanwhile, the dashboard pings kept stacking up. More services down. Usage metrics flatlined. Client logins under 5%. The CTO tried rerouting through a backup domain, but surprise, no keys, no tokens, no go. They were passengers in a car they didn't own, screaming at the steering wheel to obey. 4:01 p.m. Another email, this time from legal. 2 short sentences. We're prepared to move forward with your framework. Can we wire today? I waited 5 minutes before replying, just long enough to let them sweat. Then I typed, add a 10% reinstatement fee. Wire receipt first, then keys, send. It wasn't personal, it was architecture. And if there's one thing people forget when they cut corners and burn bridges, infrastructure has a memory. And mine is encrypted, firewalled, and worth every damn penny. By 4:23 p.m., the building's digital skeleton was cracking. Slowly, unevenly, like a mall built on swamp land. You could feel the buckling in their error logs. Oh, auth timeouts here, SSO stutters there, analytics pipes coughing up null values like dying canaries in a data mine. Their engineers tried to brute force a workaround. First, they attempted to swap out the DNS records, hoping to bypass my infrastructure entirely and reroute traffic through their internal cloud. But guess what? They had no access to the security layers I'd written. The auth proxies were married to my certificates. The token issuers checked against my root domains. Every handshake, every refresh, every heartbeat was a quiet contract, and they didn't have a pen. Next, they tried to rebuild the API endpoints using internal mirrors. That lasted all of 7 minutes before their DevOps guy pinged Trevor in Slack. We can't get past the firewall. Everything's hard-coded to her key vault. We'd need weeks to replicate this, and even then, not without client disruptions. Translation, we are screwed. They opened a Zoom war room. I know because I got the invite. Not directly, of course. Someone accidentally forwarded it to my old company email. The subject line was exquisite. Info reclamation urgent. The body, 2 lines. Goal, regain control of core routing without further escalation. Status, unstable. Dev logs attached. The attached logs were a love letter to everything they didn't understand. Line after line of errors, timeouts, certificate mismatches, decryption failures. At one point, someone had tried to override my auth flow using a sandbox account, which triggered a floodgate of 403s and a system-wide cooldown on every third-party dashboard. One of their junior sysadmins even tried calling my LLC's business number, which, at that hour, was forwarded to a voicemail that simply said, "Please refer to your contract." Clients were now joining the chaos chorus. By 4:38 p.m., one of their enterprise customers, a fintech startup with a monthly spend north of 6 figures, emailed, "If we're not operational in the next 90 minutes, we're terminating contract. Your SLA violations are stacking." Another followed, "Your login portal is rerouting to an unfamiliar domain. Legal has been notified." And then came my favorite. At 4:44 p.m., someone from their internal compliance team posted a screenshot into the executive Slack channel. It showed the back-end audit trail from 6 months ago. Internal memo approving continued use of external contractor-managed infra to minimize internal overhead. The footnote, Barbara Net Systems LLC infrastructure stable. Recommend we continue unless major issue arises. The irony, this was the major issue. They just didn't know it at the time. Or they did, and they chose to ignore it because their dashboards were green and their invoices went out on time. Either way, they'd made their bed, with me holding the frame. Real collapse came at 4:52 p.m. That's when the firewall protections I'd built into my side of the pipeline auto-triggered a quarantine protocol. Not malicious, just defensive. Their unauthorized pings were interpreted as intrusion attempts. My system shut them out cold. No more logins, no more metrics. The status page blinked red for the first time in 18 months. And then the final email arrived. Subject, "Let's talk price" from Monica Ellsworth. Time, 5:01 p.m. Barbara, you win. We've reviewed the logs, the contract, and internal approvals. Let's talk price. We're prepared to wire immediately. I stared at the email for a full 30 seconds before responding. Because this wasn't about revenge, not anymore. This was about value recognition, the thing no one ever offers until they've bled for it. They thought I was a contractor. I was the damn operating system. Meeting was scheduled for 6:00 p.m. sharp, but I showed up at 6:12. Not to be petty, just to set tempo. Let them stew in the silence a little longer. Let their desperation age like a bad Chardonnay left in the sun. The conference room was in a rented WeWork suite on the other side of the city. Neutral territory, no security badges, no glass walls, just beige furniture and enough anxiety in the air to chew through drywall. Inside, 4 people waited. Monica, the VP who'd sent the white flag email. Colin, the CTO, looking like he hadn't slept since Tuesday. A lawyer I didn't recognize, sweaty temples, blinking too much. And finally, Trevor, slouched in a corner with the nervous aura of a man who'd Googled "Can contractors sue me for incompetence?" On the way over. I walked in without a laptop, without a bag, just a manila folder tucked under one arm and the calm of someone who knew the exact price of admission. "Barbara," Monica said, standing up like this was a peace treaty negotiation. "We appreciate you making the time." I nodded, didn't sit. "I won't waste yours," I said, placing the folder on the table and sliding it toward her. She opened it. Inside, one printout, 11-point font, single page. Title, Service Rate Sheet Barbara Net Systems LLC. Colin leaned forward to read. His jaw clicked open mid-scan. At the top, domain lease and routing restoration, $420,000 flat, OAuth key reintegration, and SSO flow repair, $180,000, 24/7 technical support, 90-day term, $60,000, full transition assistance, up to 3 staff, $90,000, total, $750,000 payable upfront. Trevor choked, literally choked, coughed into his elbow and whispered something to the lawyer, who looked at me like I'd handed them a live grenade. Monica kept her face steady. "That's triple your original rate." "Correct," I said. "Triple the rate, half the goodwill." She nodded slowly. "And these terms are fixed." I finally sat down. "No partials, no net 60. You wire the total. I bring systems back online within 2 hours. That includes redirect normalization, reactivation, and traffic stabilization. I'll also onboard 2 of your engineers to the transition plan. 3 if they don't ask stupid questions." Trevor opened his mouth. I looked at him. "Don't." He closed it. Colin pinched the bridge of his nose. "You understand this sets a dangerous precedent, right?" I smiled. "You mean compensating the person who built your digital nervous system?" Yeah, dangerous stuff. The lawyer finally spoke. We'll need legal review. No, you won't, I interrupted. Your own documents confirm I retain ownership. You've already lost the review. This is the repair. Monica cleared her throat. We can wire half now, half on completion. I stood up. Then this meeting's over. Wait, she held up a hand. Barbara, please, sit down. We'll wire full. We just need 30 minutes. I sat again. Gave them the grace of a nod. You have 25. Colin looked up. And after the transition, pointed to the last line on the page. Renewal subject to mutual agreement. Otherwise, domain reverts to limited lease access. In plain English, you get 90 days to train someone and then you're back in the toll booth line. Monica looked at me. No hostility, just resignation. All right, she said. Let's get it done. They got up, shuffled into the hallway to make calls. I stayed in the room, crossed one leg over the other, and watched the sunset stain the windows orange. No gloating, no adrenaline, just structure, just clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was the invoice. At 7:14 p.m., the wire cleared. I didn't need a confirmation email. I saw it hit the business account dashboard in real time. $750,000, paid in full, upfront. No installment plans, no friendly follow-up, just cold digital obedience from the same people who had tried to erase me 48 hours ago, like I was a coffee stain on a quarterly report. The CEO didn't attend the meeting, but someone sent me a picture, snapped on the sly, of him signing the contract. He looked like he'd aged a decade in a day. Shoulders slumped, hand trembling, eyes glassy. A man who'd just realized the kingdom he inherited was built on sand and duct tape. The duct tape had a lawyer. I was at a quiet cafe on the south side, the kind with brick walls, soft jazz, and overpriced tea no one actually finishes. My laptop sat open, browser locked on the DNS management console. My fingers hovered over the keys like a conductor readying the final note. I toggled 3 settings, updated the route tables, restored certificate authority. One by one, the redirects disappeared. Dashboards reloaded. OAuth tokens refreshed. Login portals blinked back to life like someone had defibrillated their servers. Back at HQ, Slack lit up like a Christmas tree. We're back online. Barbara flipped the switch. Tell her thank you, just tell her, but I didn't want thanks. At 7:22 p.m., I received a final message from Colin. Everything's stable. Appreciate your professionalism. I typed a reply, deleted it, closed the tab. Professionalism? Please. I didn't do it to be professional. I did it because they needed to learn. That systems don't run on dashboards and buzzwords. They run on people like me. People who read the contracts, build the foundation, and never once ask for applause. I took one last sip of my tea, lukewarm now, and refreshed the internal dashboard. The title bar read, BarbaraNet External Routing Services, Status, Operational, Ownership, Active. I closed my laptop. Slid it back into the sleeve. Stood up. No fanfare, no gloating walk-off. Just the weightless clarity of someone who didn't burn a bridge, she paved the road. Installed a toll booth. And made damn sure the next time they wanted to cross it, they'd remember who owns it. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.